Hey everybody, Lisa Sabaniak here from lifelikeyoumeanit.com, coming to you live to talk again about the next chapter in my book, chapter 4 of Survivor to Warrior, You Can Change Your Life, in an attempt to help you with wherever you are on your healing journey from abuse or trauma. And today we're going to talk about having a belief in self. So the reason I don't have it as a belief in yourself, rather belief in self, is because I'm including your higher self in that as well. And so for me, there is a difference between saying belief in yourself and belief in self. So now, let's get into it. So, yesterday I was sharing my beliefs about the universe and universal energy. And if you watch that video, then you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the hand clasp. And if you don't, then I'll really, really quickly just catch you up to date. So, yesterday I was talking about the vibration of energy and how we all are made of energy, made of particles that have energy that are all vibrating at different frequencies. And I use the analogy of clasping your hands to show what it's like to try to shift your vibration. So when you're in, say, a place of negativity and shifting that into a place of positivity, how that can actually feel quite awkward and icky and not right, even though we're actually moving in the right direction. So, what I had you do is just clasp your hands like you normally would. And then I directed you to open your hands and just move your fingers in the slightly off position. So, this is how I would normally clasp my hands. And I'm asking you to shift them and then clasp. And so I've done this so many times now because I teach this in different workshops and all kinds of places. So for me, this actually, while I'm aware that it's not my norm, my kind of go to as this is, it's really not uncomfortable at all. But I still remember what it was like the very first time that I tried this, and it was really uncomfortable. And so that's just really me trying to show you again, when you shift into a different energy frequency, then it's going to feel awkward, but there's actually nothing wrong with it. Clasping your hands like this or clasping your hands like this doesn't matter, right? Your hands are still clasped, and anybody else that's looking over at you is just going to see a normal person with their hands clasped. They have no idea that you're doing anything different. So, that too is the analogy for as you are shifting to move from something that is more negative, perhaps, or less aware of yourself into an energy that's more positive or has more self awareness, then it also is going to feel uncomfortable and different and strange. But other people are just going to see you living your life. It's just you're going to be attracting different people to notice you, ones that are also vibrating at that new energy that you are trying to attain yourself. So I want to continue that thought with the belief in self, in that, going through my recovery from 10 years of child abuse, there was a lot of doubt in myself, a lot of doubt in myself. And at some point, I started to realize that, you know what, I'm pretty strong. I have gone through so many different things in my life, and a lot of them were very, very negative and very, very difficult. And I'm still here. And not only that, but I found ways to cope through what seemed like the impossible when I was very young, a time when I didn't know much about the world at all, and definitely nothing about myself and my capabilities. And yet I still found a way to cope. I found a way to get myself through it. Now, am I completely proud of every single thing that I did as a coping strategy? Well, actually, I am, right? At the beginning of the process, yeah, of course, I would look back and say, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't done it like that. But I am actually proud of all of the steps that I took now in the place that I am now, looking back at that younger version of me. because I did the absolute best that I could. And it is a flippin' miracle that I was able to do anything at all to be able to cope in that situation. So even though there was some backlash and there was some things that, were not the most positive way for me to cope, they were still coping mechanisms that I figured out how to use at such a delicate age. And when you start looking at your strengths like that and start looking at, instead of looking at all the things you wish you would have done or how you wish you would have done them or you wish it wouldn't have never happened and all that kind of stuff that you can't change no matter how much you wish it, if once you stop doing that and you start actually just honestly looking at what you did to get through, and I'm not even just talking about abuse, I'm talking about all the things that you've been through in your life. You start looking at it through fresh eyes and saying, how much more about life and myself do I know now compared to back then when I was going through that? Right? Even something that I went through last year is something that I didn't have as many tools in my bag of tricks to deal with that as I do now because I'm another year older, right? More experienced, right? Whatever. So certainly when you start going back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? You can start to appreciate your strength and what you were actually able to do rather than all the things that you wish you wouldn't have done, if that makes sense. And when you start to do that, you really start to gain pride in yourself. And you also start to realize just how strong you are. And so, this is where the belief in yourself comes in. And you start to realize, you know what? If I dealt with all of that nonsense when I knew so little about life and myself and, everything else back then, I can handle anything. I'm that much older and wiser, more, more capable, more willing, more open, more all the things that you are now, right? And you start to realize that there's nothing that's going to bring you down. Right? You have got this. It's all right to feel like you're defeated from time to time. It's all right to feel depressed, to feel angry, to feel sad. This isn't about you always feeling fabulous and your life is working out perfectly for you. You're allowed to have negativity, but that when it comes, you realize that is going to be momentary and that you are going to find a way out of this. Because look at what you were able to do before with hardly any capabilities or skill or knowledge or tools in your bag of tricks that you now have. And then the belief in self comes in. So this is belief in your higher self. So I talked a bit about universal energy yesterday, and I said we kept it all in terms of really science bites, right? Talking about particles, particles vibrating with energy, proven fact. That energy is vibrating at a different frequency, proven fact. We're made of particles, therefore we are vibrating at different frequencies, proven fact. Right? So now I'm going to start jumping into things that some people find just it's too much for their mind, and other people are like, oh, let me hear it, right? So this is where some people will want to follow me even more because of what I believe, and other people will be like, tag, I'm out. And that is just fine, right? So I believe in a higher power. And I hate to actually use that term higher power because it makes it sound like there's something that is greater than us that looms down over us. What I really mean is I believe in a source of energy because I am a scientist, right? I taught science, so and have a background in molecular and molecular cellular biology. I know that energy cannot be created or destroyed. And so, if we've already just talked about what science has proven about particles having energy and energy vibrating at a different frequency, that energy can't be created or destroyed as far as we know in physics, right? So, that means that for me, that seems very logical that there is a point source of energy. And again, I was saying yesterday that me believing in this really was a critical factor in my healing, in my recovery. And I don't hurt anybody by believing what I believe. And I might learn when I die that I was completely wrong. I also might learn that I was pretty much bang on, right? Or anywhere in between. So for me, believing in a point source of energy means that I'm part of that energy. And so are you and everything else that has energy, which is every single thing on the planet. Inanimate objects, obviously live objects, right? We all are vibrating with energy. So that energy all has a source point. And so we are all linked in that way. And we're going to talk about this in other chapters that I go deeper into from the book, because this is where my whole idea of life lessons and the amount of choice that we have and forgiveness all come into play here. So higher self then is part of you. As far as I'm concerned, my higher self that I've had many different conversations with in meditations over the years now is as an extension of myself. It's the conscious awareness in spirit form. It's the part of me that is connected to everything else in this world, including you. It's the part of me that remembers the purpose that I have here on earth. It is the part of me that remembers all the pacts that I have made with other souls in helping them in their journey and allowing them to help me in my journey. It is the remembering of all of the things that we as human beings forget once we are born. And so I look at that higher self as my gut instinct. When I feel like I'm pulled towards something, I feel like that is actually my connection to my higher self or source energy, even though those are two different things as far as I'm concerned. It's that connection that I have. And if I'm really connected with my higher self or with source energy, and I'm about to make a decision that is not right for me, then I don't feel right, right? My gut screams out, no, this isn't right. And subsequently, when I am about to make a decision that is right for me in that moment, I feel great, right? I feel in bliss. I might still feel nervous about it. It might still be something that pushes me out of my comfort zone. And so I am worrying about how I'll handle that and doing it right and whatnot. But there's a difference, right? That worry comes with a sense of expansion. Whereas when it's not the right thing for me, that worry comes with a sense of restriction. That's that difference for me. And we all have these experiences in life, right? That a lot of people call coincidences, right? I talked to you yesterday about the fire that burned down my office that actually afforded me the opportunity to move on to a different environment and actually build the big wellness center that I had just started to dream about. And this has happened all through my life, not necessarily with a horrible thing like a fire, but just times when I have followed my gut, even though I didn't understand why, right? When I closed down that wellness center, it was doing great. I loved massage therapy, but I didn't understand why I had this urge to shut it down. But I did. And I listened because I had had that fire before. I understood now that I'm going to get little nudges. And then if I don't take myself up on those opportunities, I'm going to be eventually pushed off the cliff. And in that previous case, that was a fire. So I'm not willing to allow that to happen to myself again. I'm going to listen. So I got the little nudge that I needed to not renew my lease and start working from home. Even though my home was not designed for me to take clients into it, even though I had way more clients than I had time to treat in my home because I would need to space them apart. I didn't want somebody coming in and letting themselves into my home while I was still working on my existing client and them sitting in my lounge and wandering about or anything like that. So I needed to have more space between appointments. I didn't have the time to fit everybody in. My husband at that time was, he was really concerned. But well, what am I going to do when I get home and you're still working? Like, our house is not designed for the privacy that's needed for this. But I still listen as I don't understand it either, but I'm gonna do it. And I did. I did it with as much grace as I possibly could and as much honesty with everybody that worked at the clinic with me at the time. And 3 weeks after I started working from my home, my husband and I separated. Complete shock to us both. I did not know that that's what was going to happen when I decided to close down my business months earlier when I was starting to have that pull and needed to make the decision about whether I was renewing the lease or not. And now I was in a position of not only was I dealing with closing down the business and having the clients, move over into my home for treatment, and now had to figure out what to do. And eventually ended up moving to a new house. I left that house with my husband, now ex-husband, and moved on to another place that was much more perfectly suitable actually to work on people at, a living space above where the office space was, the no interaction of that personal space, just absolutely fabulous. And, looking back on it, even just a few months later, certainly a year or so later, I realized if I hadn't made that choice to close down my business, then the universe would have made it for me because I didn't have the money to go out and buy another place and live separately from my now ex-husband and run this clinic. Even though it was a successful clinic, it was still incredibly expensive to run, right? It was right on the waterfront and huge, huge expense just in rent, never mind everything else. I literally wouldn't have been able to afford it. And so thankfully, I had listened at that time to close it down because otherwise I would have been in another 5-year lease, right? With something that I couldn't afford. And I don't know what I would have done for living accommodations in my 30s and no place to live. So all of these types of coincidences or gut instincts that you have, sometimes it does push you towards something that is scary, right? You don't understand it. You don't know why you're feeling that way, why you want to do that thing or don't want to do that thing, right? I've been in other situations where I've worked so hard for something only for a period of time to pass and me to realize I don't want to do this anymore, right? And think, oh my gosh, I'm so tempted to stick with it just because the amount of effort it took for me to get there. But at some point, you've got to honor yourself and realize that you're having those feelings led by your gut. And for me, that means you're being led by your higher self to actually get back onto the path that you're supposed to be on. And this over here, what you're doing right now, isn't it anymore. It was at that time. It served you perfectly at that time, but it no longer is, right? That was teaching for me of all the effort I put in for 4 years of university while I was in my 30s, working full time with my massage therapy practice, and all the sacrifices that I had to make to get through 4 years of university so I could become a science teacher, then move across the ocean to England, where I had never stepped foot, didn't know a single person, to change my career, move by myself, all the homesickness I went through, all of the absolute emotional breakdowns that I had in that whole transition to get here and not like teaching here in this country, but still feel like it wasn't right for me to go back to Canada, right? That was really difficult in itself. Once I met my husband and my stepsons, I realized that's why it didn't feel right to move back. Okay, so this is where I'm supposed to be, but I'm not happy teaching. And it's not the school that I'm at because I moved schools and I was just as unhappy teaching at that school. And so it was the system itself, something I can't change. I don't have the power to control. And so I have to remind myself that the only thing I do have power to control is me. And so, even though it's a hard pill to swallow to go through 4 years of education and then 5 years of teaching, and everything in between was an absolute emotional turmoil of a mess, and my whole life had been upheaved, it wasn't right for me to stay on this path of teaching anymore. All of it was to lead to me getting to England, meet my husband and my stepsons, and that's done. And now it's my choice if I'm going to stay unhappy just because I spent a lot of time, effort, and money to get to where I was. Or was I going to spend all that time, effort, and money to realize this is where I was supposed to be and now it's time to move on, right? It's listening to yourself and then having, which is really listening to self, and then having the belief in your own strength that realizing you can't make the wrong decision, right? If I decided that I was going to stay into teaching, yeah, we could call that the wrong decision, but I would have opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to get out. And if getting out was the wrong decision, then I would have opportunity after opportunity to get back in. All right. So, in that sense, I don't believe you can make a wrong choice. You're making the choice that you need to for you. It's all an opportunity to learn, grow, and heal. When you believe in yourself and the strength that you have to get through anything, that starts to back you up and start to realize actually, I'm going to start listening to my gut because I also have a belief in that higher self that I'm connected to. And that gut instinct, even though I don't understand what it's saying and why it's saying it, I'm going to listen. I'm going to allow it to guide me where I need to go. I hope that that makes sense. I will see you tomorrow where we will dive even deeper into this concept. Bless